Julia Hermann, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
I'm very happy you're here as well. I just got out of a meeting for a future podcast we're going to call it Norway 2030. Or it's actually being Norwegian, Norge 2030. So obviously looking in the future. And I asked a bunch of questions that they were kind of like set off by because of our episode. But before I release or give a hint into what we're going to be talking about today, tell us a bit about yourself.
So I'm Julia. I live close to Munich in Germany. I'm in cybersecurity for more than 20 years now. And for the past year, I've changed my profession a bit. So I've moved from the classical cybersecurity into technology strategy and innovation. And in the first half of the year of this new assignment, I've run a think tank in our company on the metaverse. And I think this is also what we're going to talk about today.
Bingo. Nice. So what you said you ran a think tank workshop?
We ran a think tank. So the assignment was from our board to explore what relevance the metaverse might have on our company portfolio and where we could potentially contribute in building the or a metaverse.
Very interesting. Tell us a bit about your company, just as context to the episode as
So
well.
I work in my day-to-day life for Giesecke+Devrient, which is a security technology company located in Munich. We're a global player, and we have 4 major playing fields, which are connectivity, mostly in the space of mobile connectivity. We work in the payments industry, producing credit cards, which is the old business, and moving to digital payment solutions. But we also produce banknote security features, banknote paper for quite some countries on this planet. And the 4th big area we're active in is identity documents and verification systems for identity documents. So a lot in the governmental space as well.
So where does the metaverse fit in those 4 pillars?
Actually, in all of them, because
Interesting.
You need connectivity to be able to connect to the metaverse. You need some sort of identity in the metaverse to identify yourself and to identify machines maybe or other assets, to identify your NFTs. Maybe you don't need cash in the sense of cash, but maybe you need digital currencies issued by a central bank at some point in time. And of course, you need some sort of digital payment transaction system, which really executes the payment transaction in and to and from the metaverse. So because it won't just be the metaverse.
Right. And I guess my first question to you, first of all, thank you for your lovely presentation in Dublin, I believe it was, at the Giesecke Summit, or what they call it, the Giesecke Digital Trust Summit or something
I think
like that,
they called it Digital Trust World, which is the annual...
Digital Trust World, that's right.
It's Giesecke's European version of their annual conference.
Yeah. So that was a great presentation, and you recommended a movie. And while we're here, what was that movie called? Because I really enjoyed it.
Ready Player One. I think it's one of the first movies that gives you an insight on what we call the consumer metaverse could look like at some point in time. Maybe not.
And so the consumer metaverse, and then you have like the business metaverse, right?
So we distinguish actually between 3 types of metaverse. We have the consumer metaverse, which is mostly for socializing, online gaming, will be for relaxing, meeting people and mostly in your private space or in the consumer space. You have what we call the enterprise metaverse, which is the 3D world for making business, for having like teams in 3D, very simple if you want. And we have the industrial metaverse, which of course for us is the greatest interest. It's very closely related to digital twins of individual assets, but also of entire shop floors, I would say, or production facilities or planes or cities.
And in that presentation you had a very cool example, which I'm sure we'll get back to, but just a quick status update on the metaverse. I own a pair of those Oculus, I think Oculus 2 or something they're called. So I believe that I've like flirted with the metaverse. I've like walked around in there, and I'm not sure if they had any shops, but I've been in this it was like a shopping mall. Everything was blue. I could see my hands. That's like the start of the metaverse, right? That's kind of where I'm not sure. That must have been Facebook. I mean, Facebook owns Oculus, so that is technically their metaverse. Did they change their name? I'm hopping over the place. I apologize, but did they change their name from Facebook to Meta as a play in the metaverse? Like they're going all into it. Do you know
I think
that?
that's what they said. I'm not so sure that they really will. So you said you have glasses. How long can you wear them?
Yeah, not more than a half an hour.
And
sure.
I think that's what we see being the biggest issue in the consumer space at the moment, that the devices are simply not ready. You can't wear them for much longer than like 30 minutes, an hour. If you go for full virtual reality, a lot of people get motion sickness if you just wear the headset. So it will be interesting to see with the new Meta Quest 2, 3, which is a combination of virtual reality and augmented reality, or the new Apple glasses, which make it much nicer so that you can actually see the room you're standing in. It's still recorded as a camera. It will be shown inside on screens, but it will merge with what you see on the metaverse and what's actually outside. So for me, that's much nicer because I get motion sickness when I wear virtual reality glasses. They're still very expensive. Battery life is not really good. They are heavy. So I think everybody's kind of waiting for these glasses to become mainstream. At the moment, you don't need to have glasses. You can still do everything also in 2D from your desktop screen or from your phone. And that's what we see happening at the moment, that most of the entry is still through the standard devices like phones.
Okay, so there you can't enter the metaverse just the normal means, but I guess in the future, the futuristic, everything we see in the movies is like put on these glasses or put something on your head and you just get immersed into this.
I think it's nice, and I think it will go there. Where we see the usage of glasses is mostly in the support guided maintenance, for example, where you have augmented reality, you wear glasses. And the glasses tell you, for example, on a production machine, what to do. There are hints for the operators of the machine. But again, also they usually don't work them for more than like an hour or something, but it's a nice hands-free option. So if you can't hold the manual and do something at the same time, those glasses are really nice to get the instruction, but to have both hands available to do something like on cars or trains during maintenance.
So there's a bunch of use cases, both for fun and for business purposes, that are going to be emerging here in the coming months and years.
Well, we already
right after this AI goes over.
Well, you can't do without AI if you look into the industrial metaverse, and we think that's the most advanced. Not doing any commercials here, but to name some big players, it's NVIDIA's Omniverse. They have created a huge platform, and it's really only just a platform that allows for rendering of 3D components. So in the end of digital twins, there is huge projects. The largest project is a European funded project called Catena X. It's no secret. You can openly look at the project. There is a huge consortium behind this. And the project is aiming at full digitization of the supply chain in the automotive industry. And what's very interesting here is that they really already use digital twin technology to optimize their production streets. So for example, and I think that's the example you were referring to, the one I gave in Dublin, is BMW is building their first virtual factory where the digital twin is actually the firstborn. So in Debrecen in Hungary, they have built together with this consortium and mostly NVIDIA a full virtual factory with virtual robots, with virtual production street, virtual cars. And with the help of AI, they optimize the building, they optimize the processes, and only once this is at a certain stage, they will, or I think they started now, to actually build the real world factory. And they plan to build factories, digital twins of all their factories around the globe, and then even go further, not only optimizing the processes in one, but optimizing them across all the factories they have. Mercedes is doing something similar, Daimler. with their luxury cars. And this is where we saw during the market analysis of our think tank the money flow at the moment.
Mm. So building a digital twin, I'm not sure if you use that word, but
Yeah.
digital twin, right? What are some of the benefits of doing that?
So the benefit of doing this is that you can test, you can feed it with, and that's the most difficult thing to get. You can feed it with data, and you can optimize before you actually optimize in your production plant. So you don't lose time. You can do predictive maintenance with this data. And for example, if you want to change the line from one model to another model, you can train the line with the data of the new model before. However, to digitize the entire automotive supply chain, you would need to include small manufacturers too. So right across my street here where I live, we have a company. They are like 10 people. They have 3 machines, and they do special parts for the automotive industry with CNC technology. And they could do the same. So with each new CNC machine, you could have a digital twin. But just creating that 3D model of existing machines is usually already €500,000. And this is just creating the digital model. You have no processes in there. You have no AI. You have no real data in there. You don't even have synthesized data in there. So what we saw and what we still see is the big ones do it. Like Maersk is doing it to optimize the container shipments across their ships. Large drilling platform providers are doing it. But the small companies will at the moment still stay behind, simply because it's too expensive for them.
Maybe kind of a hard question to ask, but like, what makes it $500,000 just to build it? Like, what is the cost behind it?
It's just the technology you need. It's usually done with laser technology, and it's simply just the effort and the cost of the tooling you need to create that 3D model.
Interesting. You mentioned NVIDIA. What other players are a part of this metaverse? Because it sounds like I was not aware that like the metaverse was like here already. You know, you mentioned Maersk and these drilling. Like, so this is big machines that are worth a lot of money. I guess those are the first things to go into this metaverse.
Yeah, so I don't think that there will ever be the metaverse at the moment. There will be different platforms. So NVIDIA will be providing one big platform. In this consortium that we were talking about, Microsoft is involved, and some other technology players are involved. And that's the biggest issue also at the moment. If you look at the different, and let's call them metaverses available today, you would also have, or I would consider things like Fortnite, Decentraland as metaverse platforms. They don't have any interoperability at the moment. So each of them is at the moment still their own ecosystem. And may it be industrial or consumer metaverse, you buy an asset in one of these platforms, you want to move it to another platform, it's almost impossible. You can do it, you need to convert it. But even if you look at the sole platform of the industrial metaverse being built on the NVIDIA platform, all the machines that you connect to it, all the data that you need to read into it from the different digital twins, you have different manufacturers of robots, of all kinds of tooling. You still need to normalize that data to make it work together. And imagine it's already an issue in this platform. The issue you will have when we start combining or maybe making them accessible by each other, all the other metaverses. So I always bring the example, what would be really nice, you know, the car configurators of the big ones, BMW, Mercedes. At the moment, you have to wait for usually a year if you order an electric car. So what would be really nice if you could configure your car in a 3D model when you want to buy it, you order it, and the moment you order it, you confirm the order, you get an NFT of your car with the exact configuration of your car. And knowing that you won't be able to drive it for a year, what would really be nice is if you could take that NFT and, for example, if you're a gaming person, take it to the GTA and drive your real car in GTA. You're laughing. I asked that question to someone from Daimler, and she was looking at me. She's like, nice business model. We haven't thought about that yet, so maybe it will come. But again, it will be technical issues, ownership issues. You would need to prove the ownership of this NFT across all the platforms. So a lot of challenges still out there, which will be overcome at some point in time, probably.
You also asked the question in your presentation, what if you
Yep.
crash it? Does that mean it's gone, or could you
Yep.
sell it? A lot of fun questions there. But yeah, when it comes to like the tech stack of these, you mentioned NVIDIA, so I'm thinking of chips and stuff. You obviously need like a lot of hardware, a lot of power to like power this. What else is a part of the technology stack of a metaverse?
You will need very good and very persistent internet connectivity if you want to do real-time rendering. So again, I'm living on the countryside. For me, access to the metaverse at the moment would be a very bumpy experience. Mostly because of the sequence of things happening in the metaverse. I think we know this from online gaming already. So imagine you're in a fight and you have too much latency that you shoot someone and he actually responds to the shooting in a one-on-one fight, but due to the latency, his shot hits you first. And this is in the end the same across all this. So you really, to have actual real-time rendering, you would need a very stable and persistent internet connection. And if you wanted to go back in time, you would also need to have persistency of the environment. So at the moment, I don't know if you're a gamer, I'm not really. But today, if you play online games, you go to a room, you fight, you go out, you go back in. Usually the room is reset to what it looked like before. And if we were building a real consumer metaverse, which is a copy of the real world, the room would need to stay in the status it was when you left it. So also a lot of challenges there. By the way, if you're into movies and TV shows, watch Upload. It's on Upload. Okay. I think it's on Amazon Prime. It's a TV show where you can, after you die, you upload your entire life into an afterlife realm in the metaverse. So,
and then your family and friends can come visit you. And is that actually something that's going to be like, you think that's real? That'll be here at one point?
It's a very ethical question, I think. Do you want that? If we ever did something like this, I guess it would be a lot of ethical and probably also religious questions around that. I don't know if I would want to live on as a kind of a hologram or avatar in a metaverse with my life copied to it. Good question.
It is a good question. But I mean, the metaverse touches into, first of all, a lot of movies and TV shows, which is fun. I've been thinking of you every time I see one of these movies. Oh yeah, cool. Add that to the podcast. But yeah, I'm not sure if you've heard about it. There is a project by Trend Micro called Project 2030, and every 10 years they basically they anticipate they foresee what's going to be here in 10 years, and they talk about the security implications of it. And that was one of the episodes. Like you actually had like in this case they had a TV show and Project 30, and the main actress, she had a brother that had passed away, but in the series he's there, just kind of robot-y. And yeah, her father was like, you need to let that go, you know? So I guess there will be a lot of ethical, what other ethical thoughts or problems we run into when it comes to the metaverse?
So probably accessibility, because it might be contributing a bit to the social split you see on this planet already, because you will need, as I said, good internet connection, good infrastructure, you will need good devices. And the question is, can you make this available really to everyone? We talked to the World Economic Forum. They are running projects on this. They are working on this to make sure that you have a fair and equal access to a metaverse, but so to the consumer part. Enterprise is always company-based. That's, I think, always another question. But for example, there are some cities like Singapore and I think parts of New York who have moved their public administration already to a metaverse. There are shops who open virtual branches in Decentraland. And what happens if you don't have access on the long run to these shops and branches? And we see it already today. If we go shopping and clothes shopping, for example, in Germany, if you go to the city, a lot of shops have closed. You don't have the same availability than you have on the internet. So for me, no problem, because I just go to some online store, I click on purchase, and it's being sent home. But do we really have the same, or will we keep this up for everybody? That will be a question. I think also an ethical question. And then, of course, you have the question about identity security, issuance of identities, and probably also fraud when it comes to payment. Because, in Western countries, usually the focus on identities and security is much higher than in the less developed countries. But the metaverse won't really know any border. There is no regulation in place at the moment. So also, I don't know if we need new regulation. That's always a good question. I'm not really a friend of issuing specific regulation to specific technology, but we would probably need to review existing technology and make it or change it so that it can also be applied in spaces like the metaverse.
Very interesting.
So there is a lot of organizations out there, and I think the most known one is the Metaverse Standards Forum. They work on these topics. They work on common technology standards to ensure interoperability on the long run. They work on identity, privacy, and security. And they will not issue regulation, but they are aiming at working together with regulators to make sure that it's coherent, and that you can't do a German regulation for the metaverse because it won't stop on the border.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And cross-border legislation is not always easy. Well, I guess it'll be EU, the Americans, and then it'll be like, yeah. When it comes to industrial metaverse, and you mentioned a few use cases, with digital twins, is there anything else that you see as like a big opportunity for companies that aren't producing huge, expensive machines or cars?
I think a big opportunity could be, depending on what they do, that you can work from everywhere. So it will save travel costs probably. I'm not saying that people shouldn't travel anymore, because the human contact is very important for team building, for making sure people work together. But if you're like working on something, on a model, on a new car model, just for example, even before it's produced, you could do this, meet in a virtual room and look all together at the 3D model. You can move it with your hands, and you wouldn't need to travel for a 1 hour or 2 hours meeting like we do today in a lot of cases. And this is what we partially see already happening in the big companies, that they meet online in these 3D rooms, if you want. I wouldn't really call it metaverse. And they look at these models together. Or if before you put production machines into huge facilities, you can see if they actually fit together. You can even walk through them. So this is where I think you can save a lot on the on cost. On the other hand, you're of course also extending your attack surface, especially in small companies who, anyways, today I think often underestimate security implications of digital technology they introduce to their shop floors. So if you're just old school analog machines not connected to the internet, now all of a sudden you have a digital twin. You just, even when you just start with it, you need to connect it to your machine, and all of a sudden your digital twin becomes the attack surface of your physical shop floor. And this is what I've seen on conferences, on talks, on presentations, often completely overseen or not really mentioned, that this is really important, because the attackers change also their way of addressing companies today.
Maybe a hard question to answer, or maybe stupid as well, but like, how could an attacker attack a metaverse? What would that even look like?
They would just scan for, like today on the internet, for open IPs, for open portals, for You can kind of fingerprint specific sensors, specific systems on the internet, and there are platforms for this. So I think the most common one known to everybody is probably Shodan, where you just log in and you can find all these open industrial systems. There was a brewery once in Germany where you could access the entire system. You could go through it. You could look at the monitors. In many cases, it's just not changing default credentials, not making sure you have multi-factor authentication. So it can be very easy, and most often I think it's just related to still, unfortunately, to human errors.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, I mean, Showdown looks for vulnerable things, right? And a metaverse literally is just a how would you describe the metaverse? Like an IP range, or it's like like
in the end, it's just technology, just that it's 3D and that you use other devices to access it. Like we could have done this also in a 3D version now, our podcast. But in the end,
that would have been cool.
But of course, in the end, it's just technology. It's still IP addresses. If you make it available to the internet, it's still standard credentials, like in many cases, username, password, or multi-factor authentication. But from this perspective, maybe it's a bit more, but in principle, it's just another context in which you operate.
Yeah. So I would assume that it's going to be like the big players now. I mean, the metaverse is already here, so there's companies working with it. I guess like Microsoft Teams is going to introduce something like that in the near future. So it's going to be the big players that are already established that establishes first, and they have security teams, risk teams, so they ethical teams hopefully as well. So they all but for somebody that's listening to this episode that is like, oh, maybe we should start using the metaverse. Like, how should they go about orienting themselves on the risks? And what would you do if you were a consultant brought into their company? Like, where would you start?
I would probably start really small. So you need to find some small spot where it really adds value to you. So what we tried also in the course of the think tank was just move our workshops from Teams to a 3D virtual room. And that didn't work because then you first of all, people had some issues. There were some technical issues, but there is no added value if you take your avatar and walk through a 3D room and then look at a PowerPoint presentation there. So as I said, you probably need to find something small where you really add value, like looking at something together, working really, collaborating on something together. If you're more like an office-based company, if you're an industrial company, I would identify small parts which are maybe not regulated. So in our case, we have a lot of regulations applicable to our company, and really start small. So what we did, for example, and what we see in a lot of companies is during the pandemic. So we have service technicians who go out and maintain banknote processing systems. And what we did, and what some other companies did, is instead of sending people there, because you couldn't send them there, we would do this guided maintenance. And it doesn't even have to be with glasses. You can do it with your phone at the moment. It's not the metaverse, but it's a first step towards it. And I think this is where a lot of companies can go about. Or what I've been in the Metaverse conference in LA, and during the summer, virtual customer journeys. So if you go to a fancy hotel, and before you book, you can go to a 3D world, even on your computer, and just walk through it and look at the hotel, make it fancy for the customers. So those are, I think, nice and small things, which are like a pre-step towards the metaverse. And then start seeing where you can really gain value from it.
Yeah. Would you think that I remember 10 years ago when I started working in security, there was a mentor of mine. He said that every company, he introduced the concept of digitalize or die, right? If you're a company and you don't have a digital strategy, you might as well just sell it immediately, because you're going to die, your company's going to die. Is it going to kind of be like this too? Like not in the next 10, 15 years, but like the metaverse or the super digitalized experiences, you have to be doing that because that's the way we're going?
Personally, I really think it depends on your company. I think for quite some time, the standard 2D web internet will still exist, and that the metaverse will start to exist in parallel. I'm not so sure if it will be, and I don't see the use case at the moment really for everything. Something else we see, I don't know, you're in Norway, right? So something else we see is that people tend to go back to in-person meetings. So the pandemic has pushed a lot for digitization and doing everything online, even like doing escape room games online, stuff like this. But also with my friends, we rather meet in person again, or we rather go out in person again. So I don't know if this is going to last, if this is going to also change again. But I think this real drive for virtual experiences is stagnating a bit, maybe.
Yeah, well, that's because I guess in part due to COVID, right?
Yep.
It was like a negative experience that made us do these things, so we're not super happy to have Teams meetings all the time, I guess, because of that negative experience. Rounding off here, some of the cool conversations that you had that you don't really have an answer to, like what kind of questions have you thought were most interesting? What's on your mind these days about the metaverse?
So the questions that we kind of left open was the afterlife question, as if something like this is ever going to happen, and how are you going to deal with this? Like, who is going to own this afterlife avatar? And some questions we really have on our mind, and something that I find quite disturbing is that whenever you talk about the industrial metaverse, that in many, many cases, the focus is on the operational benefit, but there is very few focus or very little focus on the security and risk implications of it. I mean, you know that, yes, on the shop floor, everybody asks you to fix your vulnerabilities, to patch and update your systems. And then I heard some speeches, yeah, you can do that in the metaverse. If it works, you just push it with one click to all the controllers in your shop floor. And that's the moment when I really get nervous, because you know that, yes, you should keep your systems secure, but shop floor is usually around availability, and many run for 24/7. They have a huge dependency when you run in production streets. So I would sometimes wish that they would push for doing it, but also you need to be very careful. Gaining the trust of operators on the shop floor is very, very slow. And on a scale from 0 to 10, you can reach a trust of 2, that nothing will happen, that you do it very carefully, that your security doesn't break their systems. But it can also go very quickly from +2 to -10 if something breaks. So I would be very careful in pushing it too quickly without trying slowly.
A lot of companies, I can imagine a lot of companies be putting their intellectual property in a little virtual world that they think is safe, and not really.
That's also an issue, yeah.
About, Cool. How far away, or if anybody's listening to this, do you think they should go, besides watch the movies that you've recommended, is there anything that people should, because I feel like, AI for me, or like the ChatGPT and Google Bard and everything, that was a very pleasant surprise. Here it is, and oh, cool, we start using it. And when the metaverse gets here, I would like to be like a little more prepared for what I can be using it for. Do you have any thoughts around that?
Well, if you like fantasy, there is a lot of books you can read, like the Snow Crash from Neil Stephenson. It's a huge book. You can also listen to it, or Otherland. But to be prepared for using it, I think what's same as with AI, ChatGPT, and all the other generative stuff that's coming out now is don't stop using your common sense with it. So what we've seen is people doing a lot with ChatGPT and not verifying things anymore afterwards. So I don't think that this will ever read, or not ever, but at least in the next 10, 20 years, it will not replace our need to think carefully about things and to verify things and to look at them and also question them.
I think actually this will actually make it, that all those things you just mentioned, even more important.
I sometimes hear that AI, for example, it's very easy. You can now look or do security incident management with AI. I tend to not agree to this. It helps you, but I still think at least right now and in the next years, you will need people who look at what AI or what machine learning provides to you and do this last check on it. I would never fully rely on it.
No, that's because you're smart, Julia.
I hope so.
You've seen some stuff.
Yeah.
Well, either way, when it does hit the fan and it's out there for everybody, I know who I'm going to send a mail to and ask for a refresh of the podcast. So thank you so much for your time today and for sharing your metaverse experience. And I wish you the best of luck in your future endeavors.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure being here.
Thank you. Talk soon.